Greetings, folks. Welcome to another Friday chat right here on the YouTubes. I put these chats, discussions, and classes up every single Friday, covering a pretty wide variety of topics under the umbrella term that is plant spirit work. If you are new, welcome. My name is Josh Williams. I am a traditionally trained clinical herbalist and plant spirit worker. I live here in Salt Lake City, where I am in full-time clinical practice. I've written a couple of books, and I would love for you to check them out. As I mentioned, we do these classes every single Friday. They're just a way for me to connect with you all and share information and inspiration amongst the herb-wise plant nerds out there. This week, we are revisiting a topic that actually I think we do once a year at this point, and that is answering the question, what is spiritual herbalism? We could also AKA this class, what is occult botany? Because that's fun, right? But we'll stick with what is spiritual herbalism. And I redo this class every single year because I think a fresh take is important. I think it's good to stay relevant, to allow new branches and new leaves to grow in the practice. And the way that questions show up changes, right? The way that people ask about what herbalism is, what spiritual herbalism is, what occult botany is, what working with plant spirits is, it changes year to year. You know, we get different insights and different bits of information that inform the way that we get curious and how we want to move forward. So I think this year and this week, what we're going to do is talk about four really important things in this work, according to me, right? Things that I think are really foundational, things that set spiritual herbalism apart from allopathic herbalism, pop herbalism, social media herbalism, and also set the work apart from reductionist herb magic, right? When we pick up a book on herb magic or working with plants and it's a list of this herb is good for this, and this, full stop. We want to divorce ourselves from that way of thinking because it's incorrect. It's not the way that this works. And I think there's also some overlap there into appropriate plant spirit work, working with bioregional plants, not paying to have plants extracted from the Amazon, not appropriating particular cultures' traditions and working with individual plants based on relationships that certain folks have had with certain plants for thousands of years. So all of that, we want to separate ourselves from that, right? And we want to clarify and define the path so that as we walk forward, as we take step after step down these ancient tracks, those tracks are clear and free of debris, and they are well lit and welcoming, and we can see where we're going to go next. So let's break it down. First thing that I want to talk about is this concept of spiritual herbalism, right? And kind of wrapped up in the name is the answer. What is spiritual herbalism? It's approaching the herbs as spirit, right? That we are acknowledging through a fiercely animistic experience that plants are persons, that they are fully conscious, fully sovereign citizens of the universe, just like you and I. This is always a really good opportunity to get out a pen and paper, get out your whiteboard or your mind mapping app and say, what does it mean to be a person? When I talk about somebody being a person, what is personhood, right? And generally what we come to is a realization that the things that make somebody a person are not necessarily limited to the human experience, that there's no reason why animals aren't people, and there's no reason why certain landmarks can't be people, or bodies of water, or mountains, or weather storms, or especially plants, right? Why can't they be a person? What is it about the human mind, not everywhere, but some human minds that are trained and conditioned to believe that we are somehow special, we're somehow exceptional, that we are persons where every other living being on the planet is an it, is not a person or is here in service of us, and that is the full stop reason for their existence. If you've been around for a while, I wholeheartedly do not believe or condone that way of thinking. So spiritual herbalism is a way of working with herbs, working with plants, with the acknowledgement and the experience experience that, they are fully sovereign persons. So rather than approaching herbal medicine, herbal ritual, herbal magic in this, this plant does something for me, this plant is good at healing the liver or brings abundance, or is related to the summer solstice, rather than reducing them to what they're good for and how they can be of service to the human person, we approach them as fully sovereign individual people with whom we want to enter into intentional, conscious, sorcerous relationships, right? We want to become friends with them. We want to go beyond the list of what they're good for. We want to go beyond their resume and be in relationship with their personhood. And that, my friends, is where the magic begins. That's where the true medicine happens, is when we are in deep personal relationship with not just the individual plants of our practice, the allies of our practice, but the green realm as a whole, what I call the green realm, right? The perspective, the collective experience of plant persons. So that's part one. Part two, and really there's an infinite number of parts. I'm just choosing 4 today because we have to try to make these things succinct. And if you want to go deeper into it, there are other classes on YouTube I've done where we'll go all the way in, right? So the second part is this concept of herbal magic and herbal medicine. If you're familiar with any expression of contemporary witchcraft, sorcery, high magic, low magic, folk magic, you will have experienced some idea that particular plants carry particular virtues, and that when they are employed or invoked in a ritual setting, that they can lend those virtues to us to help us create positive change, to help us create harmony, the harmony of Empedocles, right? Love rather than strife in our lives. That's magic, right? Creating transformation towards states of harmony. And then, of course, herbal medicine, right? Working with particular herbs that create specific changes in the human body in order to nudge us further and further into states of wellness, of health. So a really big part of spiritual herbalism is that the boundary that separates what is magic and what is medicine. There's like a wall between it, right? Because we can talk about herbs is the common denominator. We can talk about herbal magic and we can talk about herbal medicine, but we tend to separate the two. And sometimes there's even people that are really deeply invested in herbal medicine, but have no patience or no willingness to explore herbal magic. The folklore, the mythopoetic stories around plants, the way the plants have been worked with since time immemorial for their magical virtues. And spiritual herbalism teaches us that the boundary that separates the magic and the medicine is fake. It's not there. We're told that it's there. It's reflected through media, through societal conditioning, through the way that people write books and present herbal material. We're sort of inferred that they're different things, but they're not, right? We don't have to go back more than about 150 years into late cunning folk traditions, for example, late grimoire traditions, when we start seeing that people understood that if a plant had the capacity to move, had an affinity to move into the liver of the body and pacify excessive liver heat, that plant also had an affinity with the hot fire emotions like anger and resentment and could work on the emotional level, and that plant could also flow out into the life path and create harmonious changes in our interpersonal relationships, the way that we hold ourselves in the world, what we attract, how we relate with other people, with our job, with our work, with our passions, with our sense of protection. That differentiation of herbal magic and medicine is new. It is not real, right? It's never been real. And maybe one day I'll do another class on why I think that boundary has been created and existed. And it's got a lot to do with big pharma, and it's got to do with the suppression of indigenous spiritualities and earth-based, nature-based spiritualities through colonization and conversion by the sword, we'll save that for another time. But know that part 2 of today's discussion is that the difference between herbal magic and herbal medicine is not real. They are the same thing. The same faculty is happening, which is the person-based virtues of the plants moving into a space through invocation and creating positive change, creating harmonious transformation. The third thing that I would like to talk about is the way that plant wisdom is received, protected, and conveyed in spiritual herbalism. It's different, right? In occult botany, it's a different process. In pop herbalism, in contemporary herbalism, we open up a book on herbs, we look up herbs for the lungs, we look up mullein, and we get a bullet point list of here are 10 herbs that are good for the lungs, stop. We look up mullein and it says, here are 10 things mullein's good at for the human person, right? It's always about us, stop. And that's how the information is conveyed. So that's how we learn it. And then we start to value cerebral experiences of memorization and recall over personal heart space, liminality space experiences of connection and sorceress relationship, which is where the power really is. So in spiritual herbalism and occult botany and all of the world's shared plant medicine and plant spirit work traditions, we see that the information is received in 2 very sacred ways. One is directly from a teacher, from a mentor, from someone who has walked and embodied the path. The second is directly from the plants themselves. Who better to teach us about plant medicine than plants? Who better to teach us about the mysteries of the green realm than denizens of the green realm, be they plant or fae or guardian green? Who better to teach us about herbal magic and herbal medicine than those wise, conscious, and fully present plant persons who hold those virtues themselves? So we receive information from the herbwise, our herbwise ancestors, and from the herbs themselves. This is different. It doesn't mean that we don't read books and that we don't voraciously soak up all the materia medica, monographs, grimoires, and books, because I certainly do. Books are a huge part of my monthly financial expenditures. But it's not the only way. And more often than not, we use books as a way to edify our personal experiences, to ground out our phytognosis in reality, right? We protect this information as sacred. We don't throw all of the mysteries out openly. We don't necessarily blog about them or make reels on Instagram about them. We can talk around them and we often share bits of it, but we hold the teachings of the plants so sacred that we see ourselves as protectors. We see ourselves as recipients of a very, very valuable and hard-won boon from the green realm. And so there's very little flag waving among the plant spirit workers, right? They tend to be quieter, more humble. They tend to stay in their lane and not worry too much about what other people think about what they're doing, because they believe fiercely in the experiences that they have and in the efficacy and value of cultivating and protecting this work. And 3 is the dissemination of that wisdom, right? That we can write about it in books. I've written 2. We can blog about it. I blog. We can talk about it in YouTube videos like the one you're watching. But ultimately, there is a quickening that happens when we engage with the work directly, when we get our hands in the soil, when we have a connection with our herbwise ancestors and our teachers, and when we are willing to slow down to tree speed and meet the plants halfway, right, at that liminal space where the language of the trees and the receptivity of our heart can be in Congress, right, and allow for that flow to happen. So there's a deeper level of work that is required. It goes beyond being able to flip open a book and say, what herb is good for my lungs? And I have that herb, so I'm going to take that herb. There's more to it than that, right? That's just generally where people start. And the first step requires a lot more work. And so the 4th thing that I want to talk about is spiritual herbalism, occult botany, plant spirit work as a bona fide and fully functional spiritual path. You know, what's the purpose of spirituality? What's the purpose of walking a spiritual path other than to become more ourselves, right? To understand that the universe is made up of an infinite number of relationships, and that every relationship that's made, every thought, every firing of a neuron of your brain, every way that we show up in the world and relate to the persons, places, and things around us is an opportunity for us to nudge the fullness of things deeper and deeper into states of harmony, right? Empedocles talked about there being two primordial forces in the universe that drive the dance between the roots, the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And these two forces were love and strife, or love and chaos, or harmony and disharmony. And that the one, real power that we hold in the world is our ability to choose in each moment with every relationship we make, the ones that we make internally in the universe within, and the ones that we make around us. We get to decide if they come from a place of heart, art, hearth, harmony, and beauty, love, or if they don't. And that's a pretty powerful thing if you think about it. So there's really no way to work with plants who are very much actually the holders, the sovereign protectors of the concept of universal harmony, to the extent that it is plant symbolism through the axis mundi, the world tree, that most, if not all, cultures throughout the world at one time or another have conceptualized the way the universe flows harmoniously, right? Some form of a tree exploring and explaining how the universe works. So there's no way for us to do this work, to dovetail with plants, to do this verdant sorcery without us starting to realize that working with plants creates harmony, and that working with plants inspires us to be harmonious agents in the world, right? To go out and create harmony. And we can do that through healing ourselves with the plants, through doing plant spirit work and journey work to help us explore the parts of us that are disharmonious, and to ask the plants and their protectors to help us create harmony within. If we become healthy cells, then the body of the universe becomes that much more healthy, right? Nothing can happen in a vacuum in a universe that is based on relationships. So everything that everybody does means something. It's valuable. Every unseen, harmonious action you take, whether it's a positive thought or a positive action, is it's impossible that won't in some way nudge the wholeness of things into a slightly deeper state of harmony. So we have a lot of control. We have a lot we can do. Plant spirit work is a path of action. There's definitely contemplative work here. I talk a lot about verdant meditation, and we do a lot of meditative practices the way I teach this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's ritualized, right? It's what we do and how we show up. And so in my experience, there's no way of working with the plants that we don't end up saying, oh, God, like everything I do with these plants, whether I'm realizing it up front or not, and this is just me giving you a little treat, a little cupcake, because usually it takes people a couple of years to figure this out, right? Suddenly we look back over our experience with the plants and we say, everything that's happened has been about harmony, has been about heart, has been about hearth, has been about art, creating beauty in the world, creating harmony in the world. And I use these terms together all the time, harmony, heart, hearth, and art, because in the reconstructed Proto-Indo-European language, we know that they are all rooted in a reconstructive word, hartus, that the ancients, at least from the Proto-Indo-European world, which is not necessarily where I draw all of my inspiration, but a good deal of it comes from there. They saw all these things as connected, as related, that the universe flowing harmoniously, fitting together in a pleasing and beautiful way was the most important thing, that the avoidance of strife, of hatred, and of chaos was very, very important, and a big part of how a great deal of our plant lore and the mythopoetic ways in which we interact with the persons of plant, the fiercely and radically other that is plant, has arisen in our ancestral tradition. So 4 things to consider about spiritual herbalism. I love talking about this material. I love teaching it. I do my best to live it every day. I'm not perfect at it. Some days I'm not even good at it, but We are children of plants. They have been around for 2.5 billion years. It is because of their presence that the atmosphere in this planet formed in a way that would nourish the existence of not only humans, but many of our other animal kin. And we are quite codependent on them, as children are codependent on a parent in many ways for our food, either directly or indirectly. The fibers of our clothes, the building materials, the fuel that we use, shelter, inspiration, and beauty. There's no part of the human story that is not fully bound up in the vines of the green realm. So to engage intentionally and with a heart filled with gratitude and reciprocity, which is reciprocity is the most ancient religion on the planet. Animism is our shared and oldest philosophy or experience of the world, and reciprocity, sacred reciprocity, is the religious rite. When we engage this way, everything changes, right? We step back into the world filled with magic that we were all born into as kids. We can all look back to spaces when we were and say, for a moment there, I lived in a world that was filled with people, and a lot of them weren't humans, right? And they were all communicating and present and vital. And as grown-ups, post-conditioning, we can go back to that. It's innate, and it stirs our blood, and it wakes something up in us. So spiritual herbalism for folks who are herb-wise, who are green-blooded, who are plant-called, this really is a beautiful path, and one that is filled with so much nuance and so many beautiful cultural expressions in different places and times in the world where it's shown up. And there has never been a time more important than now to engage heart to heart with our mighty green allies. So I hope you'll stick around and continue learning and sharing with me. Being in relationship with each of you is such a blessing to me, and it's really one of my favorite parts of this work. So if you like this video and like other videos I've done, make sure and subscribe. Let me know that you're out there, and stay in touch. I do a monthly newsletter. You can sign up over on my website, and there's all kinds of events and classes in person here in Utah and online. So if you like the way that I do this and you want to engage more, you're very welcome. I would love to have you. And with that, I will send you out into the wild world we live in with blessings of peace and plenty. Take care.